In this session, we are going to discuss about average, which is one of the most important concepts from quantitative aptitude. Let us first understand the basic definition of average. Average is nothing but sum of all the elements by total number of elements. Element here can be any type of variable for the given set of people or given set of entities. And from the same formula, we can also find out the sum of the elements as sum of the elements should be equal to average value into the total number of elements. Let us take an example to understand the definition of average. Let us say there are four persons A, B, C and D, and each one of them has got some amount. For example, let's say A has got 70 rupees, B has got 60 rupees, C has got 30 rupees and D has got 40 rupees. Now what will be the average sum of money with these four persons? As per the definition, we know that average is nothing but sum of all the elements divided by total number of elements. Now element in this case is nothing but the amount with each of these persons. So I can say that the average amount should be equal to sum of all the elements divided by the number of elements. So sum of all the elements will be 70 plus 60 plus 30 plus 40 divided by the number of elements are 4. Now by simplifying this, we get 70 plus 60 is 130 plus 30 is 160 plus 40 is 200. So 200 divided by 4 will be equal to 50. Similarly, let us assume these are the weights of the four persons. So the total weight of all the four persons together will be 200 kgs. And this 200 kgs of weight, when divided equally among all the four persons, each person will be sharing a weight of 50 kgs. So remember that average is nothing but an equal distribution of all the given elements. Let us now understand what happens when a fifth person tries to join this group. For example, we already have four persons with the given values and we know that their average is 50 rupees. Let's say now a person E who has got 50 rupees wants to join the group. What will be the average for all these five persons together? Now to find out the average of all the five persons, we need not do the same calculation again. That is 70 plus 60 plus 30 plus 40 plus 50 by 5. That calculation is not required. As we have already learned that average is an equal distribution, we know that the equal share for each of these four persons is 50 rupees. And now a fifth person, E, wants to join the group who has got 50 rupees. So as you can see, there is no change in the distribution of equal shares, as E also has got 50 rupees, which is the distribution of all the four persons. So we can say that the average remains same when the person has got the value which is equal to the old average. So we need not waste our time in finding out the new average again. Remember, the average may increase or decrease depending on whether E has got more than 50 rupees or less than 50 rupees. Let us take an example to understand that. Let's say E has got 60 rupees. That is more than the average value of the four persons. Now, how to find out the new average? Again, as I've already mentioned, we need not calculate the overall average again by using the definition. Here, the simple point which needs to be understood is E has got how much extra. For example, we know that the equal distribution for the four persons is 50 rupees. Now, if you can see here, E has got 60 rupees. That means he has got 10 rupees extra when compared to the equal distribution of the four persons. Now this extra 10 rupees which E has got should again be equally divided among all the five persons. So when 10 rupees is divided among 5 persons, each person will get 2 rupees. And since already each one of them has got rupees 50 and adding 2 rupees to that, the new average will be 52 rupees. So we can say that the average amount with all the 5 persons together will be rupees 52. So as you can see here, we need not calculate the average again to find out the new average. Simply by looking at the new value and the average of the remaining persons, we can find out the new average. Let us now understand what happens when E has got less than 50 rupees. Let's assume E has got rupees 30 and the average with the four persons is rupees 50. So in this case, if you try to observe, E has got only 30 rupees, whereas the equal distribution for the four persons was rupees 50. So if you observe, E has got 20 rupees less. So instead of saying 20 rupees less, we can say that E has got minus 20 rupees extra. Now again, as we know that average is an equal distribution, whatever extra amount we have has to be divided equally among all the given persons. Now as he has got minus 20 extra, this minus 20 should be divided equally among all the 5 persons. So minus 20, when it is divided among 5 persons, each person will get minus 4 rupees. That means we have to give minus 4 rupees to each of the 5 persons. They already have 50 rupees each. So if we try to give the minus 4 to each of these persons, the average will become 46 rupees. Because they already have got 50 rupees each, and by giving minus 4, it becomes 46. Let us now take some basic examples based on the definition of average. Here the question is, Kamlesh bought 65 books for rupees 1050 from one shop and 50 books for rupees 1020 from another. What is the average price he paid per book? So as we know from the definition, average is nothing but sum of all the elements by total number of elements. Now here we need to find out the sum of the price that Kamlesh has paid for all the books. That is nothing but 1050 in one shop plus 1020 in the other. So the total amount which Kamlesh has paid for these books is 1050 plus 1020. But this should be divided by the total number of books that he has bought, which is equal to 65 plus 50. So by solving this, we get 2070 divided by 115, which is equal to rupees 18. So we can say that on an average, Kamlesh has paid 18 rupees per book. So this is how we can use the definition, that is sum of all the values by total number of values to get the average value. Let us now take another example based on the definition of average. The question here is, average of 5 positive integers is 436. So for 5 positive numbers, the average is 436. The average of first 2 numbers is 344 and the average of last 2 numbers is 554. What is the third number? So we are supposed to find out the third number out of the given 5 numbers. Now, let us look at the first point here. The average of 5 positive integers is 436. Now, we know that when the average is given to us, we can find out the sum as average into the number of elements. So here, the sum of first 5 numbers, that is A plus B plus C plus D plus E. Let us assume these are the 5 numbers, can be taken as average 436 into the number of elements, that is 5. Which will be equal to 2180. We then know that average of first 2 numbers is 344. So let us assume the average of first 2 numbers A plus B is 344. So from that we can say that the sum of A and B should be average 344 into the number of elements, that is nothing but 2 elements here, which will be equal to 688. And the average of last 2 numbers is 554. The last 2 numbers, that is D and E, their sum can be taken as average 554 into 2, as there are 2 elements D and E. So this will come out to be 1108. Now we are supposed to find out the third number, that is nothing but C. Now from the second statement we know what is A plus B, and from the third statement we know what is D plus E. So by substituting these 2 values in the first equation, we can say that 688 plus C plus 1108 should be equal to 2180. So from this, C will be equal to 2180 minus 688 minus 1108, and this comes out to be 384. Let us now discuss one more example based on the basic idea of average. The question here is, average temperature of first 3 days is 27 degrees and next 3 days is 29 degrees. If the average of the whole week is 28.5 degrees, what is the temperature of the last day? So here, as we can see, the average temperature of first 3 days, the next 3 days, and the average of the whole week is given to us. And from that, we are supposed to find out the average temperature of the last day. Let us try to solve this question by balancing the sum of the temperatures of the whole week. Now, as we know that the average temperature of the whole week is 28.5, we can say that the total temperature of all the days in the week should be 7 into 28.5. And this should be equal to the total of the first 3 days. That is nothing but average into number of days. 27 into 3 plus the total temperature of next 3 days. That is nothing but 29 into 3 plus the temperature of the last day. Let us take it as T. So by solving this equation, we can say that T should be equal to 7 into 28.5 minus 27 into 3 minus 29 into 3. On solving this, we get the answer as 31.5 degrees. So we can say that the temperature of the last day should be 31.5 degrees. Let us now understand the important concept of combined average or mixed average. The statement here is, if the average of a group of n1 elements is A1 and the average of another group of n2 elements is A2 and so on, then the average of all the groups taken together will be equal to n1A1 plus n2A2 and so on till the last product divided by n1 plus n2 plus n3 and so on. So the idea here is, whenever two different groups are given to us, the average for both the groups together can be directly taken as n1A1 plus n2A2 divided by n1 plus n2. Let us now take an example based on the concept of combined average that we have just discussed. The question here is, in a class there are 32 boys and 28 girls. The average age of the boys is 14 years and the average age of the girls is 13 years. What will be the average age of the whole class? We have just learned that whenever the average of two different groups are given to us, we can find out the combined average as n1A1 plus n2A2 divided by n1 plus n2, where n1 is the number of persons in the first group, n2 is the number of persons in the second group, and A1 and A2 are the averages of the two groups respectively. Now in the given question as well, we find two groups. One is a group of 32 boys and the other is a group of 28 girls. For these 32 boys, the average is 14 and for the 28 girls, the average is 13 years. The average age of the whole class will be nothing but the combined average of these two groups. So that can be taken as the number of people in the first group, that is 32, into the average, that is 14 years, plus the number of persons in the second group, 28, into the average, 13, divided by n1 plus n2, that is 32 plus 20. By solving this, we get the answer as 13.53. So we can say that the average age of the whole class will be 13.53 years. So this is how we can use the concept of combined average in solving these type of questions. Remember, there can be sometimes more than two groups as well. The concept remains same. n1A1 plus n2A2 plus n3A3 divided by n1 plus n2 plus n3 and so on. Let us now understand the third model from average, where we are supposed to find out the average of a smaller group out of a given larger group. The point here is, if the average of a group of n elements is A and the average of a group of n1 elements out of n elements is A1, then the average of the remaining elements, that is n minus n1 elements, will be n into A minus n1A1 divided by n minus n1. Let us now take an example based on this concept. The given question here is, the average age of a class of 65 boys is 14 years. The average of 20 of them is 14 years and that of another 15 is 12 years. So what will be the average age of the remaining boys? We have just learned that when the average age of a whole class is given and the average of smaller groups of the class is given to us, then we can find out the average of the remaining students as NA minus N1A1 minus N2A2 divided by N minus N1 minus N2, where N is the total number of students, N1 and N2 are the number of students in the other groups, and A1 and A2 are the averages of these groups respectively. So by using this point, the answer for this question can be obtained as N into A, that is total number of students 65 into their average 14 minus the other group here is of 20 boys where the average is 14 years. So total of these 20 boys can be taken as 20 into 14 minus the third group is 15 boys where the average is 12 years. So their total can be taken as 15 into 12 divided by total number of students 65 minus number of students in the first group 20 and number of students in the second group, that is 15, which comes out to be 15. So we can say that the average age of the remaining boys will be 15 years. So this is how we can solve such type of questions where the average of the whole group and the average of smaller groups out of it is given to us. And we are supposed to find out the average of the remaining group of people. Let us now understand the fourth model from averages where a new person joins or leaves the group. But to solve these type of questions, we first need to understand some important points related to average. Let us understand that. Let us assume there are 4 persons A, B, C and D and their weights are given as 32 kgs, 46 kgs, let's say C's weight is 25 kgs and D's weight is 57 kgs. So we have got 4 persons and their weights here, that is 32 kgs, 46 kgs, 25 kgs and 57 kgs. Let us first of all find out the average weight of this group. We know that average is nothing but sum of all the elements by number of elements. So that should be 32 plus 46 plus 25 plus 57 divided by 4. So 32 plus 46 is 78, 78 plus 25 is 103, plus 57 is 160 and 160 divided by 4 is 40. So we can say that the average weight of the group will be 40 kgs. Now one important point which we need to understand here is what happens to the average when each of the elements given here is increased or decreased by a particular value. Let's say each of the element is increased by 5 kgs. So the new values would be 32 plus 5, that will be 37, 46 plus 5, 51, 25 plus 5 will be 30 and 57 plus 5 will be 62. Now the average of the new group will be equal to 37 plus 51 plus 30 plus 62 divided by 4. So 37 plus 51 is 88, 88 plus 30 will be 118, 118 plus 62 is 180 and 180 divided by 4 will be 45. So as you can see here, when each of the elements was increased by 5 kgs, the average also has increased by 5 kgs because the previous average was 40 and the new average is 45 kgs. So very clearly, when each element is increased by a particular value, the average also increases by the same value. Similarly, if each of the elements is decreased by one particular value, the same operation has to be performed on the average as well. Let's say each element is decreased by 10. So we can say that the new average will be 40 minus 10, that is 30 kgs. So the point here is, whenever each of the elements is increased or decreased by a particular value x, the average also gets increased or decreased by the same value x. Let us now take an example based on the model that we have just discussed. The question here is the average age of 39 students and a teacher of a class is 11 years. If the age of the teacher is excluded, the average age of the class is reduced by 1. So what is the age of the teacher? So as you can see here, the average age of 39 students and a teacher, that means for 40 persons, 39 students and one teacher. For 40 persons, the average age is 11 years. If the age of the teacher is excluded, that means when the teacher leaves this group of 40 persons, the average age of the class is reduced by 1. So we can say that the actual average is 11. When teacher leaves, it is reduced by 1. So 11 years becomes 10 years. And from this data, we are supposed to find out what is the age of the teacher. Now one method of solving the problem here is the age of the teacher can be taken as the difference between the sum of the ages of all the 40 persons minus the sum of the ages of 39 persons. So teacher's age is the sum of all the 40 persons initially minus the sum of all the 39 persons after the teacher has left. Now we know that the average of 40 persons is 11 years. So their sum can be taken as 40 into 11 minus The average of the 39 students when the teacher leaves the group is reduced by 1. That means the average becomes 11 minus 1, 10 years. So the sum of these 39 students can be taken as 39 into 11 minus 1, since the average is reduced by 1. So by solving this, we get 440 minus 39 into 10, 390, which is equal to 50 years. So we can say that the age of the teacher is 50 years. But friends, if you try to be smart and use the concept that we have discussed earlier, the same question can be answered without writing all these steps. The point here is, we know that average age of 40 persons is 11 years. That means when the teacher was in the group, the age of each of the person can be taken as 11 years. Because we know that average is nothing but the equal distribution of the total value. So we can say that when teacher was in the group, the age of each of the person was 11 years. But once the teacher leaves the group, the average has reduced by 1. That means once the teacher comes out of the group, the average of the remaining 39 persons has decreased by 1 year each. So their age now becomes 10 years. Which is equal to 50 years. Let us now take another example from the model that we have discussed, where we have to find out the average age of the group when a new person joins the group. The question here is, average age of 31 students is 11.5 years. If teacher's age is included, the average age is increased by 1. So what is teacher's age? So as you can see here, this question is quite opposite to that we have discussed in the previous case. There, the teacher leaves the group and the average decreased by 1. But here, once the teacher is included, the average age of the group is increased by 1. Now, without wasting any of the time on the conventional method, let us understand how to solve this question in a smart way. We know that the average age of 31 students is 11.5 years. So we can say that the equal distribution for all the 31 students is 11.5 years. But once the teacher joins the group, the average age is increased by 1. So the new average for 31 plus 1, that is 32 persons, the average will become 11.5 plus 1, that is equal to 12.5 years. Now, to find out the age of the teacher, so this will be equal to 12.5 plus 31, which is 43.5. So the age of the teacher should be 43.5 years.